Good afternoon and welcome to another Kerfuffle panel show. And it could not be better. Look at this ram-packed stage we've got here. We've got a load of lovely people and myself here today to talk about Sort Move and the state of the marketplace and everything else. And to do that, I'm going to introduce the lovely Louise. And I would point out, I'm not ignoring the rest of you when I say lovely, but she's on the show so often that she insists I put lovely in front of that. So Louise, would you mind just introducing yourself? Just a brief explanation where you're from and what you do.
Sure. My name's Louise Moss. That was Louise Jeffries, and I got married. And I am the commercial director of SDL Auctions. And obviously I'm fascinated working closely with Tom and the Sort Move business in terms of how we collaborate and how we move things forward in our complex chains and our wonderful world of private treaty process that we have. And that's why I'm here.
You almost said that with sincerity rather than sarcasm. This wonderful system that we've got to deal with. Okay, and that's brilliant. Tom, head of estate agency services there over at Sort Move. Welcome to you. How are you? You okay?
Very well, thank you, Simon.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We've got Laura Birkinshaw as well, head of legal practices. Say hello.
Hiya.
Good stuff. Stephanie Walker, and I like this one particularly, Steph. Operations director of a new startup brand coming soon. You know how to
being on coy with you.
Proper clickbait, that is. Okay, we'll watch this space. Maybe that's another Kerfuffle exclusive down the line, but we're not going to worry about that too much now. Thank you again for joining us here, and Liana Laporto, director of Laporto Property, president-elect of Property Mark. Now you've embarrassed me there. I've come out with my smegging top now, and I didn't realise we had proper royalty on the show here.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us here today. It really is very, very appreciated.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Good stuff. Look, the title of today, FastArt, Sort Fast. Love it. Tom, explain to us a little bit more about what this whole proposition is and what the problem is you're trying to fix.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Simon. So, we had this penciled in for today to launch FastArt, and that's what I'm going to talk about for the next 5 minutes. But given, a lot of rhetoric and talk that's occurring in our marketplace right now about the direction of travel, about the estate agency industry and all the connecting suppliers and what they're doing, thought there's a great opportunity to actually get some key figures together and talk about those wider issues. So FastArt is one of the first things that I wanted to get live with Sort Move, and we've got a lot of other digital innovations in our roadmap that we're going to be working on through 2021 and beyond. But FastArt is designed to get sellers sale ready, essentially. Agents are very, very good at the back end of transactions that sprint into the line to exchange and completion. What we wanted to address is actually how can we streamline what happens in the first 3 or 4 weeks of a sale transaction, and that's what FastArt is designed to do. So we get sellers sale ready. We get them to complete protocol documents online. We're integrated with land registry, so we get the title plan register. We do live verification, ID checks, and AML, which, by the way, can address agents' compliance issues and not actually have to do that at their own expense if they get clients to agree to FastArt at the beginning. And they've also got a document uploader area as well, so any certificates, guarantees. So we can get that neatly packaged, and what that means is the client gets that sorted, and they can do so on our platform easily within a 2-hour window, which means that we can issue that electronically to a nominated law firm, and then they can get contracts issued pretty much the same day to the other side, rather than a classic instruction scenario on a day a sale is agreed, where it goes across to a law firm. It might take a day or two for somebody to pick that up. Then they're packaging that together, sending out paperwork in the post. It could be a week before a client receives that. They then leave it till the following weekend. And before you know it, 3 or 4 weeks passes before a law firm's even got any meaningful information back from the client. So that's why we're looking to address that. That will bring down pipeline turn rates. And it will also reduce fall through percentages as well, because I've seen this before in a past life, where if we're giving good assurances to clients on both sides, they're less likely to think either of the other is delaying anything for any unnecessary reason. So if they've got visibility on things occurring at the right time, they're content that the transaction's moving forward.
Excellent. So this is, as it says on the tin, the best possible start to ensure that, obviously, people will know how stodgy pipelines are at the moment. This is just such a massive issue, obviously, there. I mean, forgive me if I'm getting the actual number wrong, but isn't it hitting sort of 140, 150 days, something like that at the moment?
Yeah, it is, and I think the trouble and the challenge with that is that clients don't think it takes that long. Clients think isn't it 6 weeks, isn't it 8 weeks, and maybe that's because the last time they moved 15 years ago it was 6 to 8 weeks. And perhaps that's what they remember. Why we're in 2020 with all the tech advancements that we've got in the industry, are we talking about it being 5 months or so? Is obviously up for debate. And
park your
here today.
I can see you getting angry there. Yeah, we know it should all work better, and we're gonna come up with all the solutions later on as to what that makes done. But you're absolutely right. I was reading out on the podcast on Sunday with my peer Mr. Mintz, and we were talking about that 25% of the public believe that, and this is from literally listing the property to actually getting the keys, is in it under a month. I mean, that level of, that distance in terms of reality is staggering. And it's not hard to see why agents get so much of the flack, is it, when they're starting off such a poor starting position in terms of knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have, so I know that you've got a video, but I think that might be best just leaving the link for that.
Okay.
At the end, but part of the content that we've got in that video actually is because we've just come out of beta test, closed beta, we're now in open beta for FastArt, but the feedback from agents and clients has been so positive, but particularly from the clients point of view, and that's been the most important feature about what we've learned so far. Not that we've presented something groundbreaking or shattering, but we've presented something that they actually thought they would be doing in the first place. Those clients that we asked about it, and when we said the alternative would have been receiving a paper pack in the post and going off and getting your ID signed by another solicitor to a law firm in a different location, they found that quite puzzling as to why would anybody want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about it I'm talking now from a supplier's point of view. We get a little bit guilty about just all we care about is let's get the feedback, let's get the reference from the agent as obviously as our client. We quite often forget actually what's it doing ultimately for the agent's own client, which of course is if it's going to work for them, then it's going to work for the agent. So to hear the public giving that feedback is the ultimate thumbs up, isn't it, realistically?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything that we all do should be centered around the consumer.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, Steph, we were talking about your secret new new proposition here, a new agency going to launch. And can you just talk us a little bit about this and why you chose to collaborate with Sort Move on this, and indeed, what do you think the benefits of working with this FastArt is going to mean for you in the marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's lots of great offerings out there from a self-employed perspective. However, we firmly believe that the power of the brand carries weight in the UK. We believe here, traditionally, we buy brand first. And so we've developed a premium brand that will carry across all price points, that will unify the agent in their local market as the local property professional, giving them the opportunity to earn very, very well, giving them all the tools, the tech, the support, the mentorship that they need to build a successful business. However, the key thing for us is lead generation.
Yeah.
So we all know that agents are brilliant in the client's living room, building that relationship and winning that business, but agents aren't marketeers. And we firmly believe that if we can generate leads for our agents with first-class marketing and give them that level of comfort and support that on a monthly basis they have leads being generated for them, that's the best sort of partnership in this self-employed world that an agent can have. And sort of coming on to FastArt, certainly one of the things that I believe is my great responsibility in providing all that support for agents is giving them all the tools that they need to deliver the best outcome that they can for the clients. And look, we've heard some of the benefits there of the FastArt, the sort of the highlight reel. We know that time kills deals. The longer a deal is going on, the more likely it is to fall through. So if I can safeguard my agents against that happening, particularly for self-employed agents that don't have the comfort of a base salary, completions are everything for them and their client. It's that bit more important. So I believe by being able to offer the FastArt strengthens both ours and the agent's proposition firstly, and secondly will achieve the best possible result for the client.
That's really useful to know. Thanks, Steph. I think what's really interesting there, you say agents aren't obviously marketeers, and yet they do have a very marketeer kind of based approach to agency, don't they? We all, and maybe that's just because it's the sales side of things. We all look at obviously just pushing more leads into the funnel, don't we? Where do we get our new leads from? We'll listen to any prop tech that can promise us an extra, few leads there. And yet at the bottom of this funnel is this empty bucket that just is losing the business that we've worked so hard to actually get on, and it doesn't seem to get the attention that it's due, does it? And so this is why I think things like this that Tom and Laura are launching here is absolutely fundamental in terms of these are the controllables, aren't they? Any training gurus will tell you, control what you can control. This is definitely in that mantra, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's about how to convert that little pool at the bottom and continue to work on that relationship to get an outcome from that client is based on the agent concentrating on high payoff activities. So if there are other processes, pieces of technology, partnerships that you can sort of bring into that fold, the agent sort of not stays in their lane. That's probably not the right way to describe it, but we're all very good at our own job. And so we should sort of employ all of those things into our business to help supplement what we do.
It's specialization, isn't it? Yeah, literally allow them to concentrate on the most dollar productive activities they can do. And I think that's absolutely spot on. Thank you for that. That's really useful to understand. And Laura, obviously we couldn't have this conversation without law firm representation on the panel here. Well, just talk us through, just give us a bit of background as well. What really have been the main challenges since after the first lockdown?
I think there's probably been three main ones. The first one, obviously, the virus itself and actually physically stopping people moving house. In the first lockdown, we weren't allowed really to move at all. We were allowed to keep transacting, but not complete files, certainly not exchange before completion, which, as all of you know, that's always been our security blanket. You try and get them exchanged as quickly as you can. We feel better, the clients feel better, everyone feels better about it. And so that's been the biggest thing. And although that has eased, and we are now exchanging beforehand, because I'm sure all of you, we had masses and massive people trying to put through clauses, COVID clauses. People are still talking about COVID clauses going into contracts to allow them to exchange. And no one could agree one. None of the regulators would agree one. The government wouldn't allow us to agree one. And although they are still being talked about a bit, they didn't work. The standard conditions of sale already allow 10 days anyway, which theoretically, and that's working days, so theoretically allows you your time, if you did get the virus, your 14 full days. So that was obviously a big hit for all of us overnight. We all went into lockdown in March.
Yeah.
After that, what we've found as we've come out of it is we've had, the problems with the mortgage companies. Yeah. For a very long time, they weren't really releasing any mortgage offers. So we had a big delay from solicitors still working as such, although a large amount went on to furlough. But the mortgage offers not being allowed to be issued. And that was because, you had to keep the valuers safe. They weren't allowed to go into properties. So there was a big delay in those coming out. We're still experiencing huge delays with mortgage companies. It's quite well documented. They're changing their policies continuously throughout December, still in how many days they want notice to ask for mortgage money. A lot of them have gone up to 6 full days before they'll even release money. And if you think about that, you've got the day that you send it, then 6 full days, and you want the money the day before. So you're almost talking about 2 weeks before being able to complete the property of knowing. You know, we don't almost have that facility or the luxury anymore where you could go, yeah, do you know what, I'll try and get you in on Friday on a day like today. It's not possible anymore. You know, we are battling, I sit on the board of the SLC, and, you know, we're battling with some other lenders about this at the moment. Again, a large amount is because people are working from home. But I sort of feel like if the conveyancers are expected to output more at the moment than what we used to be, and a lot of us are working from home, then why wouldn't the lenders still be expected to output exactly the same amount as what we are? So we are having big issues, especially if you have to refer issues over to them. Obviously, everyone knows this big ground rent issue that keeps coming up on freehold properties.
Yeah.
A large amount of clients, estate agents, brokers still have no idea about the big issue it is causing us. Over the last month, I've had 2 alone where the issue has been, the mortgage offer has actually been declined after we've referred a rent charge issue to them. So we are experiencing big problems where even after the offer's been issued, we're having to go back and facing an offer being pulled, which is awful for the clients, because normally by that time we're probably legally ready to go. And that's a big hit. I had one the other day in a chain of 9 of us, and my mortgage offer got pulled. You know, and how to start explaining that to all of those clients, it's heartbreaking for them.
It really is, isn't it? There's a very human dimension to all of this, which obviously sometimes gets lost.
It does. And I think one of the next biggest thing that we're experiencing is searches. You know, searches are so delayed in certain areas. As you know, places like Hackney still aren't open at all. You can't get a personal search. The office just isn't open. They're now saying nothing will get done until after the stamp duty holiday already. So we won't get searches at all before the end of March. You know, and
Laura, so how will FastArt then help the kind of conveyancing community and help to obviously help these early progression of sales?
I think the reason it'll help, and like Tom rightly said, it's not a new thing. You know, there's no one going out and saying that this is a new idea that Sort Move have had. But I think we are trying maybe a second, third, fourth iteration of what I know, and this is probably a swear word for quite a lot of people, the hips pack. But you know, it's almost, if you think about it, the idea behind it is that you were pre-forwarding all of that information. Yeah. And a lot of solicitors, you know, I'm sure you will remember back in 2005, 2006, we fought it quite dramatically. Solicitors just don't like change. We don't like it. But the idea behind it, as Tom rightly said, is to support that client in enabling them to get all of that pack written, delivered, and provided to their solicitor within, you know, ideally 24 hours. You know, that will allow us, and with the slight difference with the FastArt is we get the land registry as well straight away. It allows us to be able to issue immediately on receipt of those documents. We are in the beta test with Tom, and we did one the other day, and I think from, obviously it was a new one, you know, we were testing it, but from the client sending it, I think it was 2 hours before we issued the contract pack. And don't get me wrong, that's not going to happen most of the time, because we were waiting for it to come in and we issued straight away. But I think going back to the prop tech, if you have the right prop tech and you have the right system in place, then actually we could provide that and support that a lot better if what we're getting in is of a better standard. You know, the AML is already done, the CREDAS is done. We often fight for weeks to get clients to send their ID to us, and I understand it's difficult nowadays, isn't it, to get that certified, or you know, all of those sorts of things. And there's a lot of prop tech now enabling us to do that without those clients seeing anyone, which is perfect. I do think if we can get packs sent to us much quicker, you know, most of you will be aware of the BASPI that they're trying to put forward. So it's, you know, probably another iteration of that. I think if HIPS would have carried on 15 years ago and we'd have put the full logbooks in place then, I do think conveyancing would be a much different place now. You know, if we could have had 15 years of logbooks now, really this big issue that we're having with searches might not have been as big an issue, because we'd have our backlog of fences, building regs, planning permission. We'd have the old local searches we could rely on, and then feel a bit better about taking out indemnity insurance. So
that's like the estate agency version of chicken used to taste of chicken back then, isn't it? If we stop with it. But there was a lot of people who were saying the devil was in the detail with HIPS, wasn't there? That it shouldn't have been thrown out completely. And maybe it's a bit of you be careful of what you wish for as much as anything here, isn't it? So we can see this, but that does show what technology can deliver in terms of helping with transparency of information where available, doesn't it? I mean, we aren't, we genuinely aren't talking about building a nuclear submarine or anything here, are we? We're talking about sharing the information between relevant parties who should all be digitally enabled these days. And I know it's not as simple as that, but it certainly shouldn't be the challenge that it is now. So again, look, we've got to, thank any initiative that tries to obviously stop these issues that are happening there. Okay, Laura, thank you for that for the moment. And Louise, obviously I need to again state my bias. I love auctions and everything else. It should be done much more widely. So this is me saying you don't need to do quite as much. But of course, most people do associate auctions with obviously delivering on speed and certainty and everything else there. Can FastArt, though, amongst other streamlined processes as well, help to achieve the same levels of assurance with private treaty sales?
Yeah, I think it's got to contribute to it. I think the big part of that is that it's educating consumers as well as our agency communities to say there's some real benefits in this, and if we don't know what those pitfalls are, people will shy away from telling them it's going to be 6 months. That's the reality. Nobody really wants to hear the bad news, because inherently we're, in an agency, you're wanting to sell the dream and sell somebody's house and move up and help them move on. And we know the reality is very different. It's interesting from what we've learned from an auctions point of view, where it absolutely fits into. Obviously, we're selling things with auction conditions which have a different set of expectations. So it's not absolutely. But one of the biggest things that keeps our sales on track from an auctions point of view is that element of the front end piece that says when another solicitor sees a legal pack, which are the main encompasses of those title deeds and the searches and everybody is as much as you can be proceedable, it just makes the process easier. It's not just the silver bullet. It's coupled with any number of things. But the big thing is actually communicating with customers about what this protects from them. That says, listen, this means that the costs associated with delays are significant, but nobody talks about those. No. Nobody's sort of saying, actually, and we were in a position, we were one of those slightly nutty people, and I've been in property for too long now, but we exchanged and we couldn't complete within 10 days because we had something horrendous happen, and then suddenly you go, oh my god, and I should know better, but I was still in that situation where we ended up having to pay interest on top of that outstanding piece. But that was because of there's so many movable feasts and pieces in this. And like Laura, you've mentioned, the lenders, the impacts that, whether it's the surveying community, whether it's the conveyancers, whether it's the estate agent, but all of it comes down to better communication, because otherwise I call it a journey of disappointment. And unfortunately, the person at the end of that stick is the estate agent. And it's mostly not their fault. Mostly not. They're doing everything they can. And I think that's part of us being more open and upfront about this, to say, look, what are the things that can turn the dial? And it's not just one magic thing, but actually FastArt can really help that process. And again, we get the other bits right and it all builds into that.
It's absolutely spot on what you say there, isn't it? Really, agents are so often the collateral damage, as it were, from the process and everything else going there, and so there is going to be some sort of, kickback or debris falling on them from this here, and the only way that they can avoid much of that is to be, you don't have to be brutally honest, but you do need to highlight that obviously that this is the reality with the situation, not least as we're talking about now. There's no point encouraging people about thinking about the stamp duty, everything else, when in large parts of the country, as we've just established, they're not gonna make it unless things change. Okay, thank you for that, Louise. So, Leanna, great, as we said before, to have the Property Mark president-elect on. Obviously, you've got your own agency as well, but we'll come to that next. I'd like to come to you with, obviously, the Property Mark hat on at the moment. Clearly, you've heard, obviously, the guys here talk quite lucidly about, obviously, kind of how fractured the processes, everything else at the moment, and how that inevitably leads to so many stresses across the board, not just from the consumer's point of view, but as Laura was highlighting there, I can well imagine how that impacts on all of her team when they have to deliver this hard information and everything else there. With it taking about 5 months on average to complete a sale once agreed, missing that stamp duty deadline in March that many will be thinking is totally achievable, especially with those misconceptions. What needs to change to try and sort this out?
Gosh, it's just unbelievable that the system is still in place nowadays in 2020. It's so archaic, and looking at it, as with National Association of Estate Agents, they've been working on it, especially Simon Wilkinson, and they've come up with the sales toolkit to shorten this process. And in 2019, 200 sales have gone through, and they've managed to shorten the process to 8 weeks. However, this is pretty much, PropTech companies coming up with a solution to make this whole process not such an emotional roller coaster, because it's it's people's lives, it's people. There are so many situations when a chain falls through. We all know how heartbreaking it is to give the news. So for me, it's transparency from the start, having everything out, the property information questionnaire, take it to the valuation, have all the information up front. If there are any issues that need to be addressed, they can be addressed early on, and you take it instead of negotiating 3 or 4 times, which I'm sure we've all been in a position that we have had to do. We have everything at the start. If it's when, for me, I'd have searches, I'd have surveys, I'd have everything in that pack. And as you said, Laura, with the home information pack, it was a horrible word at the time, but actually having that information, having as much information up front, will only make the process easier for everybody involved in it. So I think a lot needs to change in the way that agents approach it. I think we need to be more responsible in how we gather the information at the start. And I think if all agencies do that, I think if we manage to get, online form rather than a paper form, and we have that up and running and everybody's using the system, then it's going to speed up the process. We're going to shorten this process, and then we have less fall throughs, and then we have a happier process throughout. So yes, I think I also think that once we have all those unknowns at the start and we're able to do them, the Law Society should probably be more willing to endorse the PIQ instead of the TA6 form. And I think because of ROPA coming in, agents will be more qualified to help people answer the questions, because a lot of people struggle with that, and that's what takes time. So they'll be able to sit on the sofa, do what they have to do, and do their job to a next level, which will be help them fill those forms that they find difficulty, sit with your, elderly couple and have a cup of tea with them, guide them through that process, and then it's easier for solicitors and easier for everybody throughout the process. So as much information up front as possible, in my view.
Excellent. And we'll come back to ROPA later on, actually, there. One of the key things, I think one of the benefits you have over Property Mark and everything else is you do get to see very close up national associations from other countries, don't you? I've been lucky enough to kind of, certainly with the American and the Australian markets, I know them quite well. Do you think it's no coincidence that those countries that have such a better process
Well, yeah, I mean,
Also, estate agents are perceived as being much more valuable to society. Obviously, famously, it's over here. Normally, you're juggling, you're bounced between sort of politicians, bankers, and everything else there. Then right at the bottom we have prop tech, but that's a separate. But in America, in particular, you know, realtors are very well respected, aren't they, by the community?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go back to my hometown in Malta, and I have it on my bio. It was an shock, absolute shock, to come to the UK, and suddenly, I mean, it was, you know, I started and I'd walk in and say I'm an estate agent, and everybody would go boo. It was an absolute shock, because I had worked my way up. I was quite proud of being an estate agent. Then I came here, and it was just like, oh my gosh, you know, you're on a completely different level. And it was that really gave me the, you know, the willingness to go out and change the perception of this industry and just make it better. And it is because anybody can do it. And that's why qualification, but also the system is easier. Yes, you're more well regarded because it's an easier process. In Malta, you put a 10% deposit, you do everything after the 3 months after you put your deposit, you go, you know, you delve into all the warts of, so to speak. But I think it's part of the process, but I think the other part, the huge part of it, is the qualification, of course.
Of course, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. I think, Tom, you were on the show as well the other day, where you highlighted and burst the bubble of that urban myth of people moving at once every seven years, which of course I'd been using, and again, as I always do, spout that out to anyone that would listen. You made the point, I think it was ZPG had highlighted that actually it's nothing like that. It's on average 17 years on average there. So that, you know, with that level of misconception, you said, because they're not getting involved in this process, anything like what you could deem as regularly, they're not going to understand, are they? They're not going to know the nuances. They're not going to know just over the course of this year how much it's moved and everything else. So they've got to rely heavily on being educated and being guided by the key representatives we have around this panel here on each part of the process. And we go back to it before, they just believe that everything's going to be quicker before. So transparency and honesty, I think no one's going to disagree, are we? That's got to be one of the center points of everything we're talking about here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I mean, Louise, just in terms of everything else, there's been a lot of call. Look, it's not like we've all remained quiet on this, have we? We've called for the government to do everything. And to be fair, you know, I'm not going to let my lefty credentials out here. Governments of all types have not done much to address it at all. They clearly are leaving it up to the private sector to handle and sort this out. With so much talk, though, about collaboration, there does seem to be a real willingness here from the key players in our industry working better together. Do you think that can deliver much better outcomes for everyone?
I think it has to. I mean, I know it's, you know, we joke about it, don't we, within our industry, about how many different housing ministers we've had in the last, I don't know how many years. And you know what? I've worked in property specifically for 10 years, and every day I learn something new. And I learn from a conversation I'd have with Laura or Leanna every day. And so we expect consumers who do it once every 17 years to get it. And actually, we expect our politicians to get it. And you know what? A lot of them don't. You know, a lot of them don't actually know the implications of what happens when you're getting a valuation for your mortgage, and, you know, or what the commitments are if you know, haven't exchanged or have exchanged, or, you know, all the fact that actually, you know, it's shocking when you distill it to the fact of, I can offer that process to buy somebody's house, and 6 months down the road, just pull out. It's nuts. And it's that sort of elephant. So I think there's that bit of, don't get me wrong, it's quite tricky. Because if it was easy, that we would have all been prop tech millionaires by now, and we would have found the widget that would have made it better. The thing is, there's not one widget, there's not one solution. So for me, it's pulling those movable parts together and having great collaboration between the different key movers, and that will be the lenders as well as the solicitors, as well as the local authorities, as well as the people who own the properties and the housing associations, and God knows what other movable parts there are. And it's making sure that we also take some of the jargon out of it. And I know I'm the world's worst for it, because we talk about this all the time because it's our language. But I'm amazed, even, with estate agents today, and again, I think ROPA will help that as well, is that we assume that, and also when, you're young and salesy, you don't want to make out that you don't really know what you don't know. Nobody wants to put their hands up and say, I don't really know what's going to happen if, why wouldn't you just exchange? No, it's fine. You've got an AIP, you can crack on, nobody, somebody doesn't know what an AIP is. That's the thing. We talk about this language of going, or people think that a survey is going to tell them something about their property. It's not. It's for the lender. You just get to pay for it. There's so many pieces that we've got to take the responsibility on of starting to educate it. But to be fair, it's not easy. So I think the people that know of coming together and actually finding the best way through, nothing will be perfect, but I think we'd all take better over perfect at the moment. And I think
demystifying is a key thing, isn't it? Genuinely, is you talk to people about, and we're just even something as basic as chains, just getting that concept across to vendors and everything else, and why it's important, and the idea that somebody else can affect theirs. They understand it kind of probably one up, one down, don't they? But you start getting into these complicated ones, and they haven't got a Scooby-Doo, to be honest. And you're quite right about the housing ministers. My analogy with them at the moment is as many housing ministers as I'm having substantial meals. So that's quite a lot at the moment in terms of where we're going. And Tom, you're obviously talking to a load of different agents on a daily basis. I'd imagine your colleagues at Sort Refer do the same with your mortgage broker networks. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the feelings on both sides are that they're all absolutely shattered and knackered. At the minute, they were forced into having a bit of breathing time, a bit of thinking time in the first lockdown, and I think a lot of people appreciated that. Actually, as horrible as this virus has been and the impact that it's had, I think a lot of people have actually been a little bit thankful for a bit of break in play, so they can do a bit of self-reflection and a bit of soul searching about actually what they want out of this, because they love this industry. It's a highly addictive industry, but they don't want to carry on the way it is right now. And the amount of sales progress, the time that they have to spend on sales progression, it's at least 2/3 of their working time is spent on progressing sales at the moment, and it shouldn't be like that. The salespeople, they want the process to be slick. They want it to be assured. They want to know, right, these are the circumstances on this matter. I can confidently say that X, Y, and Z points are going to happen, and then we'll get to exchange and completion. But it's just so unpredictable still at the moment. And as Laura will testify as well, we're not talking about normal timeframes in the day that people are working. I check in on our platform and I see conveyancers putting notes on at gone 10 o'clock at night, knowing that they probably work between 7 and 7 on that day already. It's just nobody likes how it is like now, what it's like now. Nobody asked for it. Nobody wanted it. Everybody wants it to change and improve.
So you think it's fine, it's not talk. It's probably, this is the moment. If anything's going to change, it's going to be now.
It's got to be. It absolutely got to be. We should not be talking about 5 months on average in 2020 at all.
Oh, insanity, absolutely insanity. And let's just go back to Law on that basis. Inevitably, with that part of the Kerfuffle show where I talk about my favourite company, Just Eat or Deliveroo, and I try and draw a tenuous analogy with what's happening here. But you do suffer, don't you? Because the problem that you've got is the same public that are dealing with you deal with these companies like that and Uber, where everything is on demand instantaneously. The idea of waiting 10 minutes for a cab has gone out the window, hasn't it? If it's more than 3 minutes, you're throwing your hands in the air now. How do you possibly deal with that increasing expectation level for the public in a not just in time? That's the wrong phrase. That's the supermarket, isn't it? It's a we want it now a mentality. Just talk us through that increasing burden on your job and the expectations and how you deal with it.
How we deal with it, to be honest, I'm not sure. It's
smile on your face.
It's breaking a lot of conveyancers. I'm sure you guys are quite heavy into LinkedIn. The amount of people posting now who you can see are at breaking point. People who have never felt it before, even in the 2008 2009 recession. We were pretty hardy. You got on with it. This time it's the opposite of the recession. It's gone bonkers. And in that 12 years, you've also had the emergence of like you say, everything is at your fingertips. Email is instant. And although we already had email, it was almost still like things that it sort of was used, not, commonplace. There's so many things now. People expect you to be able to instantly reply to their email. And if you don't, and it doesn't matter whether you then reply in 2 hours, that isn't good enough. We've put an auto reply to ask people to give us 48 hours to reply. And the amount of clients who've simply just come back to me and said, no, that I'm not prepared to do that. And they're not lying about it. They're just simply saying no. And I'm saying that in actually the politest terms, because that isn't how people are responding to us.
We'll have an X-rated show where with GDPR you could talk us through some of those responses, because that explains. I was gonna be a bit negative about the British public there, but you've tried to do your best. You've done the autoresponder to set expectations, and that somehow has riled enough of these people to say, "Not on my watch. I want and demand better because I'm the customer." That phrase, "the customer's always right," has a lot to answer for, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think you're all right. There's a lot of things, isn't there? There's setting expectations, there's demystifying the process. At the beginning, I don't think we're setting anyone's expectations very well. We haven't, and I don't mean just the legal side, the whole of the profession, I don't think has really publicised how long it now takes to get through a transaction and why. And I think the why is because none of us really know why it's taken more than double what it used to 10 years ago. We can't figure it out ourselves. So we don't know what to say out to the public. We don't know how to say to them no in a nice way. I'm trying to get our staff to say no. And that isn't met very well, of course. But, it's how you say no and how you explain why you can't do that. But, we are still coming across, unfortunately, a lot of estate agents, a lot of mortgage brokers still saying to our clients, it's 6 to 8 weeks. And that's, how do we then come back from that when that is already set at the beginning? My initial letter out now, and I'm actually ashamed to say this, but my letter says 18 to 20 weeks. And actually that probably still isn't long enough. And I was really, I changed it. And it's quite upsetting as a professional to have to change that to say from 6 to 8 to 18 to 20 weeks. I mean, how can we have got ourselves into this trouble? But, we have got into this position. Conveyancers are so overworked. They've got far too many files. The amount of people I've seen that just won't be coming back to conveyancing in January because they know how awful January to April is going to be. We can't get the staff to deal with it. Like Tom says, most of us are working at least 16-hour days. Most of us work over the weekends. And even then, it's not good enough. And, I said earlier, it's heartbreaking to have to tell someone that their chain has fallen through. But just imagine the public don't seem to realize at the end of the day, they're actually still shouting at a human. We are trying our best. I spend my time away from my kids trying to get these people to move.
That's the irony. You're trying to work. It's not like there's any part of the process that you're trying to put a barrier between them, are you? You're trying to make their dream move happen at the end of the day. You didn't just make me think that I was quite lucky being in prop tech, having my 2-day working week, but just to feed the beliefs of agents out there that we all pontificate about everything. I think you're right. And by the way, there is a fantastic book actually, just called The Power of No. If anyone does want to do it, I think that again, coming back to it, salespeople just don't like saying no, do they? And actually, it can be the very best thing you do, but that needs training and development to deliver that kind of hard news properly, doesn't it?
And legal people don't know how to say no. And I think Louise is right. We don't know how to say no in a normal way. We don't know how to take the legal words out of it and say to people, this is why. And whenever I'm training my staff, I always say to them, if you read that letter to your dad, could he understand exactly what you mean? Because if he doesn't, delete it and start again. Because, we train for such a long time and we learn all of these big words, but these big words don't mean anything to anyone else. They don't explain.
I literally, legalese, I suddenly become dyslexic when I'm reading it there. We were drawing up our basic contracts and went to a legal firm that literally promised that they would put it, and they always made the point that these often it shouldn't need to be like that. Actually, a contract could be just a supportive part of a proposal explaining what is happening, right? And I think too often we're watching our asses on this in the best possible sense, aren't we? And being a bit clever with sub clauses and terms of agreements, certainly in terms of the supplier network there. So yeah, it sounds. I mean, it just genuinely it sounds like a really, really tough period there. And I think that's one of the things I'd appeal to everyone is remember that it's all too easy to blame people on the other side, isn't it? Agents joking about the solicitors and they're not picking up email and everything else. So, solicitors looking back the other way. That it doesn't work unless everyone works together, does it?
Yeah, and you can get such amazing partnerships when you work together a lot. You really can get amazing partnerships between solicitors, estate agents and brokers. You can get to that point where you phone someone and say, can you just do me this favor? Can you go and get this for me? Or can you phone someone? Can you chase this chain? And it's invaluable, but we do need to work together more.
That's something that technology can never do, is it? And of course, that's where the value of having the good people working hand in glove with the best technology does really deliver. Okay, Laura, I think that's good. I'm a bit more. I'm not sure I feel better about understanding the thing there, but I certainly now know a little bit more. Just coming back to you, Deanna, if that's all right. Obviously, we mentioned before, just going back with your agency hat on now, you recently moved from kind of a high street kind of model to the EXP model, a very exciting, obviously, new development that's really taking the industry by storm at the moment. Could you just explain to us, was that kind of your pandemic moment? You had a sort of epiphany and you realised it, or what was it that really appealed to you about the self-employed model?
Kind of. So it's in Malta you work as a self-employed agent, so I wasn't new to the model. So there was a little bit of the epiphany that a lot of people have experienced through lockdown, which was what is going to make me really happy in 10 years time. So I was reassessing. It was that stop in life where you had time to really think about things, and I had been hearing about the self-employed model, and as an agent in the industry for a very long time. Well, today's my birthday, so when you get past 40, it's just really, it just doesn't. It's not as exciting. Anyway, for being, I realized that people come for you rather than the brand, and I think it was slightly different because I felt that EXP could offer me my own brand. I am the brand, but give me all the support that I need to really survive and succeed in it. And I'm a mum of 2 young kids, and I work at my own times, and I think any mum, can relate to this situation. That sometimes you need to be there for your children, and in a very corporate world, it's not always possible. But I'm happy to work at 6 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night. I'm a worker at heart, so I knew I could do it. You're built out of a certain, you work in a certain way. You can work all hours, so it just gave me that flexibility, and the model appealed to me. The EXP way, where I could be my own person within that brand, was very appealing. And so I've been setting up, and the last few months have been extremely exciting. Just getting.
That's great. I mean, I think that's really it. I mean, don't get me started on the whole, because we're going to be having a few panel shows on obviously the whole point about women within the industry and why they're not more, better represented and everything else. And I think, the corporate world isn't particularly forgiving, is it? But I don't want to sidetrack.
No sidetracking there. But also, I really enjoyed the fact that I could give that personal service, because I do enjoy sitting, as I said before, sitting on that sofa, spending time with my client, and that one-to-one. And it used to really drive me crazy that certain information that was passed on to me would not be passed on to buyers, and there was for me there was a part of the link which was missing, and I'm able to now provide that one-to-one service, which was really important to me.
And again, just going back to it as well, it's all really just about clear explanation, isn't it? Being transparent in terms of, I'm going to be working for you at some very strange time, but I'm going to be working round the clock to make this there. But there's going to be times when I'm with my family when I'm going to obviously need to sort them. And I think the thing I've loved about this, do you remember who was the BBC news report where the little girl running the back? Do you remember? Everyone who's ever been on one of these calls will kind of just go, yeah, that's our biggest fear. I tell you what, that's just gone out the window. That's just a staple. No one cares one way or another, does it? These days,
yeah, absolutely. In fact,
I genuinely think that's a really wonderful element about this. Is people are, and I know many suppliers, obviously within the industry, who hated the idea about their staff working from home and everything else. Just would never even think about it in a million years, and have had again epiphanies when they've realised not only can they be as productive, they can be more productive. And once you've got round that worry that they're watching Jeremy Kyle first thing in the morning, you realise that they're saving 2 hours travel a day, so cut them some slack. Anyway, sorry, I really will go into a 2-hour show if we're talking about this. This is on your basis here as well.
I think
go on.
Next year, that's the bit that excites me, I think, because I think we have been stuck at home, and probably more enforced. But actually, going into next year, of course, we've got the choice. We've got the choice, and we can go out and socialise and still see people, and that's all to come. And I think that's a bit of going. It's been, I think about you, Laura, and I was thinking about the community of conveyancers and go, I've never really stopped and felt sorry for them. I genuinely haven't. So I'm glad you've made me think like that. I think I know it has. And you know what? We've all done bloody brilliantly, really. And actually, the choices that we now have as business people, men, women, or whatever, to be more connected with our families or spend less time traveling and do the moments and the touch points. It's like tech. Tech is brilliant only if you've got supported by brilliant people,
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Just on that point of your birthday, I'm looking around the hotel room. I haven't found a cake. I've found a bit of shortbread, so I will. I'll send that to you as just a. We're not going to do the happy birthday.
I didn't mean to mention it. That just came up. Never mention it. But then I was thinking, I've been in this a long time. Oh my gosh, I'm really old.
And from your point of view, just like Leanna, you've seen the advantage. You've worked in both independent, you've worked in corporate. That took you to Purple Bricks. That led itself quite excitingly over to the States, where, of course, this model is absolutely prevalent there. And again, your new business is going to be very much in that self-employed in that space. It's obviously seemingly growing in popularity over here. Is this the future, you think, of real estate in the UK? And again, I suppose, what were your key learnings from that time in America?
So on your first question, I think it's a great question. And yes, I absolutely believe the future of UK real estate is in the self-employed agency space. And I believe that because if you, the agent, are taking care of that transaction from start to finish, you should earn the majority of the commission. And as Leanne pointed out, other countries, most countries across the globe actually operate in that way. So, why would we do it any differently? And I think if I was an agent who backed myself, I backed my work ethic, I believed I could go out there to win business, then I wouldn't not consider it. That's not to say there doesn't need to be more seats at the table for different types of models, but I suppose we've got the onliners who have reached that sort of 5 to 6% market share. So what that tells us is 95% of the sellers out there and potentially buyers want a more traditional offering. Yeah. But what COVID has shown us is that we don't need to be sat in an office on the high street to sell homes. We've all probably sat there running branches, offices in the past. So you look at your P&L, and at the very bottom is staff, rents, rates, and utilities, and that's a very big sort of cost center. So if we can create the ability for people to transact, agents to offer the ability to transact virtually from the comfort of their own home and earn very well from it, that for me is 100% the future. Learnings from the US, I'll try not to waffle on too long, but I think it sort of starts with thinking about what we should and shouldn't perhaps implement here, and understanding that realtors have the opportunity in most markets across the States to earn 6% of the deal, 3% either side of the transaction, and you can double end. Obviously, in order to do that, though, they have to get a real estate license, and every single year there's continuous education to keep that license. So for that, 5 or 6%, not only is there some, more regulation there, but it probably takes them 4 or 5 times longer to service a listing. And then in a lot of the states, in a lot of the real estate markets, actually the liability lies with the agent. They are doing the contracts, the paperwork, they're the broker of the entire deal. Whereas here, obviously, that liability lies with the conveyancers. And I'm not saying take all of that liability away from conveyancers and give it to UK estate agents. But what I do think, and we've also kind of touched on that through this conversation, is that if agents themselves are better informed, if they have a clearer process to follow, if there's some minimum requirements to become an agent and walk somebody through that, it's the largest financial situation that most people will ever find themselves in, and it's also their home, which is equal to the finance side of things. So I think definitely if there's some more accountability on the agent side, it will help with all of those things and all of the sort of problems we've mentioned today. And I think just going back to that potential to earn 6% from a deal, it meant I lived in a city called Irvine in Orange County. Average house price $900K. So 6% on that deal, that's a $55,000 paycheck. Which even if you only represent one side, that's 27 grand. So I think those earnings are just so far apart from us here in terms of, agents generally are going to charge 1% to 1.5%. So there's one piece of the US realtor model that I personally, and certainly my business partners and I don't think should be replicated. And that's the kind of team scenario. Okay. So, if you have a team or a brokerage in that sense, and then you're sat under a brand, be it, a customer facing brand, or you develop your own brand within that, let's say you're earning 70%, but the team earns 60 and you take that 10 back. Well, when there's 55 grand in a paycheck, your 10% of that is a pretty decent cut. And therefore you've got lots of time to spend mentoring that agent that you bring on under you. But a tiny slice of 1% of a home sale, that for me, there's not enough skin in the game there to devote a whole load of time to mentoring that agent. You'd have to have a ton of agents to make that really worth your while, and then you wouldn't have enough time to mentor those agents. And also you don't have time to do your own deal. So I think I sort of alluded to it earlier. I think, to really make that self-employed model work here in the UK, it's about allowing agents to focus on that high payoff activity, and that's building relationships with sellers, with buyers, and selling homes, and making sure that all the other sort of cogs in the machine are being dealt with by experts in that field.
I think that's really interesting. And I'm assuming as well the whole MLS side of things, obviously sharing that's a massive dynamic of that market as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny because I know there's lots of talks amongst people here that want to bring an MLS to the UK, and it sounds fantastic, but realtors hate the MLS. They absolutely despise it.
What you're for again, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it is better the devil you know than the devil you don't. But certainly from the realtors that I know, and I have many friends still over in the States that constantly send me pictures of them sipping a beer by the pool under a palm tree, which is fantastic. But yeah, I'm not sure MLS is the sort of the pinnacle of how we saw our system out here.
Okay. That's really, really interesting to know. And look, you mentioned there in terms of obviously, the licensing and regulation. So leads me perfectly on to the next question. This is an open question, really. But do we think that ROPA will help to create a better industry for all? Anyone can jump in on this if they are so inclined.
Well, I don't know if starting on that one, Simon. And I was a bit gutted actually because I'd ordered a new Christmas jumper. And I was hoping it was going to arrive for today. It was an NHS one. Half the profit was going to go to them. And coming from Trafford, and I'm incredibly proud of that institution.
Yeah.
But this leads back to that being the professional and being regulated, so being that consultant. Because I've had 3 or 4 small operations in the past, all under the NHS. And what I remember from each one of those is the consultant going through the whole process and the procedure. But as we've talked about a little bit already today, we haven't just, they don't just talk about what the positive outcome is. They also talk about what the risk might be of that operation. You've got to be fully aware of what you get yourself into. And I think that's where we do fall down in a state agency, because a lot of the time it is just that gleam and shine of, you've got a great house, it will sell in no time at all. Which right now is true. We've got properties, literally selling themselves. It's what happens once that deal is agreed, and that's what the consumer doesn't know about. That's what agents have to get better at, and I think ROPA will go a long way to that.
I think one of the things, again, from the US is, when you go to a listing appointment as a realtor, you are supposed to fill out a net sheet. The net sheet with that client basically walks them through every financial step within that journey. So you uncover by the end of the listing appointment whether this is a financially feasible move based on what they need to cover on a mortgage, what they need to buy on. And I think we'd like to say that we are that in depth here, but I don't think we potentially are.
It will create a level playing field too. I mean, and instill consumer confidence. It's not going to be as easy to all become qualified. I mean, but as agents, I think it's going to set people apart. It's not going to allow everybody, and not everybody will continue within this industry, but it will really provide a career for people starting out once it's in play. And I think it's a really important part for the UK.
Yeah. I think when you look at because the financial services industry went through the same process, and it absolutely did lose a certain cohort of people who weren't prepared to go and do that. And anybody who's done brokerage, CMAP or IFA or stuff exams, it's pretty weighty. The responsibility is very heavy. And I think one of the things that's happened, to Steph's point, when you look at the rest of the world, we don't have the fees available to split an MLS, an M&N in that environment. And that's why one of the really important things, and it's something that, we talk about all the time, and part of our collaboration with, Salt Move is agents have to do more than one thing as well. So, and actually, for them to have a viable business, they need to monetize those opportunities to help the client. And actually, even if there is a, that upfront cost that they might not want to pay, there's a really good reason that FastArt will pay dividends for them and give them a better secure sale. There's a reason that somebody, will need to have a conversation with a mortgage broker before they put an offer in. All of those things that sometimes as estate agents we shy away from. Whereas actually, if you're going to be a helpful agent to those clients, you've got to do those things, because that brings those movable parts in one place and gives you as the agent more control. And again, I think that's something that we've got to sort of look at in the future, bringing those opportunities together, really. And hopefully this is the start of that, really.
Yeah, I think there is a key point here, isn't it? After there was that big race to the bottom in terms of fees, the wonderful thing that profit gives you is options, doesn't it? In terms of what services you can provide, what training you can deliver. And I'll never forget the first time I saw a Richard Rawlings training session many years ago, and he showed this little for sale sign on a little Addis Ababa. Basically, it was a mud hut, ostensibly. It had for sale 5% fee. It's like sort of even the little mud hut kind of estate agent was getting 5% compared to obviously what we get here. It's a fundamental issue, and hopefully Roper, will raise those standards. Will be able to raise the fees to feel more confident to ask for more, and that has got to be a good thing all round, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So talking about, let's do wearing a different hat. So we're now the housing minister. You've got probably 7 minutes before you're shuffled into another department. What would you set out to achieve over the next couple of years, which you're not going to be given? So anybody here, what would you do if you were housing minister?
I'd like them to look at the the leasehold section as well, the management companies. Obviously, it started going through last year. They've put it through Parliament a few times this year. I think that would massively benefit clients, chains. They have put forward the how long people have, so how long management companies have to actually respond to inquiries, and also very importantly for clients, how much they can charge. There are extortionate fees with, some. We had £450 just to draft a 2-page document the other day. I think if that regulation can go through along with Roper, I think to start regulating all of the supporting people around the conveyancing process, because I think sometimes, people forget how long it takes a conveyancer to qualify. We are qualified. It takes us years to do our job. And I think if we could get the supporting services around that also qualified, then we can, as a whole and as a group, go out and say, do you know what? We all know what we're doing. We're all working together. And we can all, as you so rightly said, push our fees up, because we've done the same. We've raced to the bottom and we get pennies now for a qualified person to do a job, which is why we have to take on so many files. But for me, one of the biggest things, I think for a large amount of our side, talking from the conveyancer side, would be to get the management companies all regulated.
Yeah. Well, Laura, unfortunately, I've got to tell you, that sounds so obvious, so logical. It's not going to be adopted. So sorry, you've messed up there by really making a really, really good point. Anybody else want to throw that?
I think for me, it's real time searches. That would be fabulous. Yeah. And obviously licensing and regulation. But imagine having everything there just at the click of a button.
I could genuinely see the smile on your face. That would be your best birthday present.
Shorten this process.
Excellent. Anybody else? Housing minister dreams, fantasy football housing minister.
I think it's that transparency, isn't it? It's about being really transparent. I know, auctions sometimes, when you look at, people find out about special conditions and things like that. So again, we're really trying to push that. But sometimes you feel a bit lonely because, if there are other businesses not being that transparent, whereas if there is that level playing field of going, everybody can do this, but you have to do it this way, and you have to play by the same set of rules, then the cream rises and people will engage with people that they trust. And that's what we need to do, is build trust. and be upfront about the way we interact and the work, what we're doing to help clients, because that's the point. All of us are coming at this from the point of going, people don't know. But people don't know what, so genuinely, you can wake up tomorrow and be an estate agent. All of us would probably say, is that okay? Probably not. We can sit there and go, oh, I can't believe that conveyance has taken that long. And they've got a law degree, and all of those movable parts, when you look at surveying, I think it's great that ASOC's RICS has been accepted, and we're trying to make it more accessible for people to become experts in their field. But the point is, it's not worked, estate agents being all things to all people. It's not worked, and they're not. They can't be. It's an impossibility.
It's jack of all trades, isn't it? How could you possibly ever? Yeah.
So play to your strengths, play to the fact that I care about the person's, requirements and outcome, whether that's to sell a house or to buy a house or to move on positively, negatively, whatever those circumstances are. Play to those strengths of going, you should be brilliant at relationships, and you can plug in the expertise around you and get the right network of support. But you've got to have a minimum entry level as well that says, let's at least be professionals about this, because that will raise the bar for everybody, really.
Excellent.
Well, look, that's my pitch for the job.
One thing we've achieved here today is you are all record breakers, because this is now officially the longest Kerfuffle webinar, which I think shows. First of all, well, I'm not blaming you, to be fair, Louise. Ordinarily, I would do, but I think it shows the size and scale of the problem, the issue, and everything else there. And I think that's obviously there. And then, of course, having people who are so experienced as your good selves to hear your expert views has been an absolute godsend. Tom, I think it remains for me to leave it for you, though, really, just to say, what do you think really are the three key takeaways for agents from all of what the above, what we've been discussing today?
So specifically, what we've launched recently in FastArt, and that's designed to help agents talk about that part of the process earlier, and to help them educate better and influence better. Because if they're doing that, they will help their clients, and they will be more helpful as an agent themselves. Delays in the process do increase the likelihood of fall through. So if you eliminate those delays, or you eliminate the perception of delays, that 1 in 3 fall rate will start coming down, because better assurances gives better outcomes. I've just made the point about educating and influencing clients and setting fair expectations. It's not right for somebody to say it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks. At the moment, it's just not possible. The process doesn't allow it to happen. So it's unfair to set those client expectations, because somebody's going to get it in the neck somewhere down the line. So it's just be better influencers and educators. And I guess now what we've talked about, we've all got a collective desire to grab this industry by the neck and give it a real good shake up. Collaboration of all key parts of the industry is going to be so important moving forward. So take the time now to assess what you want to be, who you want to be, and how you can get there. Laura said before about comments banding around on LinkedIn. I see a lot from agents as well. Agents are genuinely fed up. They don't understand as well why it's taken so long. So start talking to key players in the industry. How can they help their business? How can they help them as an agent? They need the help. They're already starting to realize that they need more help. They can't do everything themselves. So it's just step back a little bit. Take a little bit more breathing time over Christmas and going into the new year, and just think about how you want to set your stall out, what you want to achieve, and how you're going to get there.
That's great advice. Thank you for that, Tom. And one thing I was just going to say is, obviously, do go to have a look at Sort Moves landing page on the wonderful pink review site, obviously, Kerfuffle there with our wonderful Christmas branding, and there's always great deals going on the website. I think we've got a consultancy service with yourself, Tom, haven't we, or one of your team at the moment on there. Click on the I'm interested, contact me button, and we'll push this straight through him to be able to help out with any of your queries, quandaries, and to obviously learn a bit more about what they're doing there now. So it remains for me to say thank you today. It's been absolutely fantastic getting your expert feedback. Louise, thank you. You've turned off all the Christmas lights. Was that to stop the
it was just, I've just moved, that's all.
Oh, okay. I thought your electricity bill had got too much. Luana, thank you very much. Best of luck with obviously the new XP business and indeed the upcoming Property Mart thing. Obviously, we'd love to have you on the show and talk to us in more detail on that. Steph, best of luck with and your birthday. Sorry, birthday drinks. Hopefully you enjoy that as much as possible. Steph, congratulations with your business, and again, we'd love to hear how that goes and develops further on. And Laura, I really just want to give you a big hug and say I hope it will get better.
We want it to get better.
Socially distanced hug, yeah.
There you go. As I said, I feel a lot more sympathetic and understanding now, and that's not a bad place. If you can make me think about somebody else, you've done a good thing. Right, thank you very much. Thanks for everyone watching. Please reach out to Tom if you have any questions. Cheers, guys. Have a great Christmas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everyone.